Test, test, test. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear it.
Okay, good.
You've got the speakers on.
Yeah. It'll be interesting if you were to try to hear it on your phone because you're going to hear it spaced differently. It's going to be a lag time on your phone.
Oh, yeah,
It'll be like you'll hear it, hear it, hear it, hear it, hear
the
it.
sound is off on my phone.
Okay.
And it's not always easy to hear with your mask on.
Right?
I wonder if they would allow you to take the mask off.
There's a sign right here that says, please do not remove your mask while speaking at the podium.
This is not city council meeting.
Right, understood.
If people back up on that.
I just want to be a good role model in this community. I don't want to be the one person, hey, he comes to town and he doesn't wear a mask. Yeah, I mean, it's much better without, but
Oh, well,
I don't want to be that one.
besides I can follow you on the Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Put the first document up. Where you slide it on there.
No, you should. Let's see here if I can do this. Host disabled.
Fine.
Um,
Failed at home.
let's co-host. Now that you're the host, come in and make me a co-host. So go up to my name and go to more over on the right-hand side. just saying something.
I'm saying something.
Very good. That's
How
good.
was your drive to Whittier?
Perfect. So I All right, just to honor everybody's time, we'll go ahead and get started. I would scoot this way, but we've got YouTube Live going, and we have Zoom going as well. Debbie Treese is running our Zoom documents, so she is doing a screen share for those. She'll be sharing with us, any of the chat that comes in through Zoom. So I kind of need to be up here by the mic so that we can keep all of that intact. But welcome, everybody. I mean, this is a real familiar group, so it's going to be a really good conversation. It'd be great to have more. But tonight, the purpose of tonight is to share with you some of the thoughts that we've been putting together, staff, administration, about what school looks like coming in the fall. But we realize that we've got to move forward in this together. We need community input. We need your input. So what you've got in front of you are draft documents. They are not finalized by any means, and we're hoping to get input from community tonight and moving forward as we work to finalize and what school is going to look like. I do want to start by just thanking Whittier for opening up the Naylene and Jim have been really huge in allowing us to use this space. It's the only face-to-face meeting we'll have doing our community meetings. But it's nice to be able to do that, masks and all, but it was really generous of them. Want to recognize that Charlene and Frankie, two of our board members, are here. And we've got Lindsay, Andrea, and Doug, and Victor. So we've got a good staff here as well to walk through what we've got as far as these documents go. We've got, if we need it, we've got about an hour and a half to talk through this thing. We're not going to end up with a finalized document at the end of tonight. What we are going to do is look for input that we can take back to staff and say, okay, this is what the community had. These are the questions. These are the comments. How do we need to modify to move forward? I apologize. My mask keeps falling down. So you should have two documents, basically. One is the low, medium, and high risk document, and the other one is a little more detailed in regards to what happens at those levels. We're going to start tonight just looking at this document, at the risk level document. And I want to start by just sharing with you that, yeah.
Just before you start on the document, is there can you Debbie or give us an idea who's on the Zoom, or if there's anybody?
We have just one community member on here from Whittier on the Zoom meeting. I can't see the YouTube who's there, but we do have Leela and is taking our notes for us. Debbie's obviously there. Charlene's logged in. Okay, we got 5 on YouTube. So for those of you on YouTube, these documents are pasted below in the chat section?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can pull these up and see what we're referring to. But this is designed to be a one-page document that community can say, what was school going to look like in general? At a high level, what's a one-page thing? What can we be expecting moving forward? These aren't the details. The details come a little bit more in the follow-up documents, but we wanted something that people could look at and say, okay, I've got an idea. Are my kids going back to school or not? How long are they going back to school? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be full day? That kind of thing. And it's all going to be based on the risk level that we determine our community to be in. So the state is allowing communities to put forth the initial determination of what that risk level is. When we get started, we'll have to submit that to the state. And they'll have to, the Department of Health and Social Services will say, yes, we're confirming that, yes, we're confirming that you've assessed your risk level properly. So we've got low, medium, and high risk here. Those levels are determined at the state level, or at least those terms are determined at the state level. We're going to be working directly with the city and with the clinic. And we don't have everything in place yet, but I've already had conversations with Jim and trying to get a hold of Paul to ensure that we have clear communication I know that there's some confidentiality in small communities about identifying those that, when there's an active case. We need to know. We are an organization that needs to know to make sure we're keeping our kids safe. So we can't determine risk level if we don't know if there are active cases in our community or not. So we'll be working those details out. We're not trying to break any HIPAA or FERPA rules. We're not trying to identify individuals, but we need to know if there are active cases going on in our community. It's the only way we can determine what we should be doing with our school setting. So take a look at these risk levels. We want to be as objective as possible, as clear as possible, moving from one to the other. And yet it's very contextual in what these looks like. Obviously, if you look at low risk level, no active cases, no new cases being identified. That's what if we don't have any active cases, we're going to go back looking at, saying we're going to be at low risk, and this is what school will look like. As active cases come in, as we get them, if we get them, we're obviously going to have to make those determinations with the city, with the clinic, with our staff, and ultimately I'll end up making that decision about moving to a different risk level and changing what school looks like. It's hard to be absolutely formulaic, because we could have a case of someone who has no connection to our school, that maybe lives in the manor, that is quarantined. That's much different than a student or a staff member. A student or a staff member has that. We surely end up moving pretty high up the scale pretty quickly. So we're going to try to be as clear as possible as we move up that scale. And I will tell you that moving up the scale can happen very quickly. We're not going to hesitate if we see an active case, especially if we see an active case in the school. We might go from low to high overnight. We'll be communicating that out. Coming back down is going to look different. We need to do that very carefully. We probably need to do that over the course of 14 days of coming back down, ensuring that the risk level truly has gone back down. So that's just to cover basically how those are going to be determined in a general sense. I'd be glad to talk about those more if there are questions around that. Actually, are there questions about that? And then we'll just kind of look through some of the components of this document, and I'm going to take input before we move into the other ones. Any questions or thoughts about those risk levels? So for now, we're okay. Feel free to bring them up, and we can come back to them as we need to. But let's take a look. Yeah, Anna.
Considering that there have been a couple cases identified recently, would we say now, would we say, I mean, because some districts are saying we're at this level already. Are we gonna say that we're at a certain level, or are we not? Are we gonna wait till like the week before?
We'll wait till we're a little closer, and we'll have really clear, we'll be in sync with the city and the clinic on what that looks like. And we'll communicate that out.
Mike, this is Debbie. Could you repeat the question? The mics are not picking up the question very well.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. The question was, will we determine that now, or will we wait a little bit to determine our risk level? Thank you. And so what happens now, we're still a month away from school. It would be odd to start saying, okay, to just putting risk levels on us now, but we will be doing that as we get a little closer. I also want to point out that at the bottom of the page, we are recognizing not only Whittier, but we're recognizing the context in which we live, recognizing that Whittier residents travel to Anchorage a lot, and recognizing what does Anchorage look like. And so I think it's important for us, before we start saying we're going back to normal, we need to see not only Whittier staying negative, but we need to see a significant decrease in our surrounding communities where Whittier residents are regularly traveling. So that's what that bottom statement says, that our goal is to get our kids back in school, but we're only going to do so safely. And to do that, before we take all off and go back to what feels a little bit normal, our communities need to be seeing a decline, and we need to be able to do that safely. So that's what this statement at the bottom here says, because we've had conversations about if we're low risk now, how do we ever go back, to where we were? And that statement is what that's about. So let's take a look at low risk, and then I'll pause for a little bit and get some feedback from you. We're talking about student days, and this input is from staff and administration. We've had several meetings, and several people have put a lot of hours into, what could this look like? Again, not set in stone, but this is our best thinking to date that we want to share with you. That our student days, if we're at low risk, all our kids are going back to school 5 days a week. But notice there is one change there, that it'd be 5 hours a day. Typically, we are 5.5 hours a day. We'd be looking at 9 to 3 instead of 9 to 3:30. That is not to mitigate the risk of COVID, because taking a half hour off your day doesn't mitigate the risk of COVID. If it's there at 9 in the morning as well as 3:30 in the afternoon. Is to recognize the fact that there are added things that our teachers and our staff are going to have to do to make sure our schools stay safe. We may have students who are feeling like they need to stay home. We maybe need to be preparing some lessons and things for those students. We are going to need to be doing some more cleaning every day. We need to make sure that we're not just adding to our teacher and our staff day, making those extremely long, but we have to give space and time to make sure that we stay safe. So that's what that is about. We'd be looking at shorter days, even at low risk, to ensure we can continue looking at our long-term capacity, that we can continue to move forward safely and without overwhelming everybody. So that is one thing that I do want to point out and mention. We have had a lot of conversation around staff and students masked. That is our best thinking right now, to be safe, thinking about the highest risk people that we have in our community, but open for conversation. Not every school district is doing that, but we've had conversations around that. And at least that's what we're putting forward here, and we do want some input around students and staff being masked at low risk. Community events held at the school. Right now we're talking about limited, and we're talking about things like open gym and things like that. And honestly, I've gone back and forth. We've talked about limited, case by case basis on, will we let community members into the school? I've gone back and forth between limited and none. That's my thinking. But right now we're talking about limited. But as soon as a community goes into the school, we've got to follow up and we've got to clean it. We don't know who all's been there. We can't expect that they've done their due diligence, and our kids are coming back the next day. So again, looking at the capacity we have to be able to keep our school clean and safe. But right now we're talking about limited at low risk. And then safety precautions taken. What we've done in those safety precautions taken is basically saying, hey, take a look at the next couple pages. You'll see general protections plus low risk. Those are what come next. So we didn't want to try to list them all out. We wanted to try to keep a nice clean one pager. And you will notice that there are some things in there that we'll talk about when we get to that page. Probably one of the most significant is thermometers taking temperatures. We haven't set a specific yet of, is that going to be everybody? Is it going to be every day? What will that look like? But it is in there, even at low risk. Again, monitoring the health of our students and our staff. So any questions, thought, input you have about low risk?
Mike, this is Debbie.
Hi, Deb.
Just one request. Can you turn your laptop so that you're in the picture? Could you keep, there we go. I think that's probably a little bit
Okay,
better. Otherwise, you're completely gone.
Okay, I've got to stay here. Okay. There's 10 of us here, so it feels odd to stand behind a podium, but I will do it. I said I would. So perfect. Again, please feel free. This is a fluid document. It's a fluid conversation. So just pop in when you're ready. We've got a small group here to have this conversation with. It's not designed for me to be the only one presenting, but to have this conversation. We are looking for input. Looking at medium risk, and medium risk is that one that feels more fluid. So we get an active case. what does that active case look like? Who is that active case? Depends on if we jump into our medium or we just skip medium and we go into high. It depends on who and what that active case looks like. Again, we're looking at all students again in school. I've looked extensively at the American Academy of Pediatrics and what they recommend. They're recommending for the health of our communities, the health of our children, to do what we can to mitigate risk while still having kids in school. I think it's a goal we should all have, but we're not going to do it and be unsafe. So at medium risk, we're still trying to get all of our kids in school. If we can do that, but we have to modify our schedule, we'll do that. That's better than jumping to high risk and having everybody stay home. So we're going to continue to probably enhance or expand our social distancing, maybe limit student movement in the building if we jump up to medium risk. We might spread desks apart even farther. The American Academy speaks to, they differ slightly with the CDC in regards to social distancing, in regards to if you have to limit your class size by spreading everybody out and kids don't get to come to school except for Mondays and Thursdays or alternate days, it is better to change that social distancing to like a 3 to 6 foot range, especially if students are already masked. So we'll be looking at both the 3 to 6 foot range. If we hit medium, we're going to spread them out as far as we can, still trying to keep our kids in school. But we do have in there the potential that we might need to modify a schedule to have them come on alternate days, mornings, afternoons. We don't have that set yet, but we are putting that into consideration. Everybody continues to be masked. We've jumped to the no community events. Yeah, Anna.
Oh, just a quick question about masks. Preschoolers, we watched something the other day, and they were saying a study out of North Korea found that kids 10 and under were a lot less likely to transmit to another person. So I think about, 3-year-olds wearing a mask, are we gonna require them? That seems like a lot. So I don't know, have you guys thought about, or what's the thought process about our little ones wearing masks?
Yeah.
I know when they're saying like in Anchorage, if it's 2 and above, you go to the store or whatever, but having that information that they're probably less likely to transmit.
Right. So the question is, what about preschoolers? Students under 10, there's some evidence that they are less likely to transmit or exhibit symptoms of. And that comes in the American Academy of Pediatrics speaks to that as well. That's a good question. We have not fully discussed it, but I think we need to have that determination. You're talking about a 3-year-old with a mask on for half a day. I don't know. We need to wrestle with that. And Leila, let's make sure we take that note down to follow up on what we want to do. If it's going to be a mask for all students, will we have accommodations for preschoolers when they're in the classroom? I don't know. But no, that's a good thought. It's a good comment. Yeah, Doug.
It's just a good starting point, not on the topic of masks, but just a real quick as far as Mike is seeking some input. Just to give you just a little context for what you're looking at as far as drafts, because I think this is what's really helpful. We tried, what you're looking at here is what. Oh,
Yeah, you can use that one,
Can I
Doug.
use this mic?
Yep.
Okay. Am I gonna be loud for you guys, or just the people on?
Just push the button, Doug.
So. Got it. Okay. What I wanted to do is just give a quick context for the 3 pages that are online and that you guys are looking at that would really be helpful to us to get input and feedback on, because what we tried to create here was quite challenging because we tried to create what I call refrigerator documents. These are quick reference documents that parents, students, community members could put up on their refrigerator and reference them. So we wanted to be real cautious to not overcomplicate it, yet also be as clear as we could. So this is the overall 1-pager. And then the 2 pages with the low, medium, high that have more detail on them are designed to kind of get taped up along next to them so that you could, parents, community members could drill down to get a little more information. We, of course, have yet another layer of documents that have quite a bit more detail that drill down more into things that would impact staff and things that we would do internally that we would try not to overcomplicate things. But in doing that, we obviously had to make decisions and compromises. So what would be really helpful is, as Mike goes through this, if you notice anything that's like, whoa, this would be really nice to have on these documents, that would be really good to get people's input. So that's why I just wanted to give everybody a little context for that.
Great. Thank you, Doug. Debbie, could you hear that?
Yes, thank you for moving to the mic.
All right, great, thanks. And then we look over at high risk, and high risk is kind of back to what we did in the spring. We're going to be online learning. We'll be talking with staff about what platforms we'll be using and what that will look like. But if we go to high risk, we need to close the schools, the school building, and we need to revert back. So we'll go there quickly if we need to. We can do that in one day, but we would anticipate that setting a date. We'll be there for, I'm just going to say now, probably 2 weeks anyway, and reevaluating daily, when we can come back. So we would have to go from a high risk and then nothing happens for 2 weeks before we move back down to medium or low. So it's not going to be like, okay, we're high risk today. Am I going back to school tomorrow? No, we'll set a date for the community so you have an idea of what that looks like. We're trying to give a little bit of sense of planning a little, so you're not just, do I go today? Do I not go today? And that communication that Doug and I were speaking about it beforehand, we'll be asking the head teacher probably daily to connect with the clinic and the city. Where do we stand to make sure that we are responding correctly? Any other questions about this document, the main document, before we kind of go to some of the others? Just kind of drilling down a little bit further. Yeah, please do.
Just one other thing that is, in trying to distill this down into one page. The one area that I definitely want to highlight here is on the medium risk, because it's very clear at low risk, students are in school 5 days a week. High risk, we'll be moving to an online delivery platform. Medium risk, and Mike mentioned this, the hope is that we can keep kids in the building face-to-face as much as possible, but we want parents prepared. That's something I feel like we have to communicate, right? That it's really important that parents know, okay, I'm going to have kids home 2 days a week or 3 days a week or 1 day, whatever that ends up being. But I want to make sure that when you all look at this, that it's really clear that at medium risk, there's a potential for students to be at home for at least part of the school week. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you guys could have a chance to give us feedback if we need to make that more explicit.
Yeah, thank you, Doug.
One other question, sorry to call.
No, that's why we're here.
A lot of districts are offering from the very onset the option for students to learn from home, regardless of where they're at. And I know we have focus homeschool, so, where are we, if a parent feels like, I want to keep my kid home this school year, are they going to enroll in focus, or are they going to be, or I don't know if you guys have that answer yet, but I did have a parent talk to me
Right.
about that, specifically not wanting their child to be at school, and what will that look like for them? Do they go to focus, or are they going to be supported by our teachers here?
Okay.
And do you have an answer?
No, thanks. So the question is for parents. Some school districts are offering online options for families that don't want to send their kids to school. And will we have that option? Or if a family wants to do that, what will that look like? Will they need to join Focus, our homeschool program, or will we be supporting them from the school? We don't have it fully in place yet. But our goal, and I'm looking at our capacity, is to use this model as our guide for what we'll be providing primarily. I don't think we can ask our teachers to do 5 days a week, face-to-face, and then every evening do 5 days a week online. We don't have the capacity, nor would I expect our teachers to do that. So at this point, we're moving forward with this. And as parents come forward, I think we need to work with them individually. You'll see in some of these documents of recognizing high-risk students, high-risk families, that we're not ignoring them by any means. We want to meet all of our families' needs. But we're not going to come out and say, here's what you want to do if you want to do online. Here's what we don't have the capacity to spread our teachers. I don't think we can do either very well if we do that. But we're not going to leave, we're going to respect families who want to keep their kids home for safety reasons, and we'll do the best we can to meet their needs. It may be focus, and it may be some support from our staff here. So I think right now, I just say it's going to be case by case, individualized basis. So good question. Dave?
Mike, when it says active cases, is that active cases in the community or is it active cases in school? Or people directly associated with school?
Right now, it's active cases in the community.
So, for instance, over the last week, there have been 2 cases that we've identified in the community. They both are isolated.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering, does that still count as a community? I guess what I'm asking is, would that automatically put us in a medium risk category?
Right. Potentially. And I think, again, we want to try to be as clear as possible, moving from level to level, but we also really need to recognize context. And I think we can probably do that, and that line is not a hard black line between low and medium. When you look at the differences, we surely wouldn't go to an alternate schedule because of those cases. But we might, be aware, we might move to medium risk. We might spread our kids out a little bit more, but, still do that 5 day a week. Again, part of that is contextual, much different than if we had somebody, one of our neighbors, one of our families. That does change things, extensively. So, yeah, we need to work directly with the community to say, how do you perceive that risk for our kids, so that we're doing this together. We're not a separate voice from the clinic and the city. But no, that's a perfect example of that. I just want to give Andrea a chance. I mean, Andrea's put a ton of time into this, and I want to recognize that. Do you have anything you want to add to that at this time, Andrea?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
You've got it covered so far.
Okay. I want to make sure that I don't leave anything left unsaid or vary from the time that you and Christine have put in.
Mike,
Yes.
I just want to emphasize that last point that, Dave, I think the critical piece too is really when we're looking at this, where it has impacted the standards, high. And that's what's going to be critical for the schools to be working on a daily basis, checking in with the city. For exactly the context that you mentioned. Okay, these are quarantine cases. They're not anywhere in context with the school. We can remain at medium risk, limited community events. Only school and staff, or students and staff in the school, rather than moving to a high risk. But we also don't want to end up much like a situation that's happening in Anchorage right now, where these cases are continuing to expand and not be responsive. So I think it's going to require just that daily communication with the school to talk to, whether it's Jim or Andy or whomever, to say, hey, where are we in the city, so that we as a school are responding sort of in parallel with how the city.
And for those online, Doug,
Sorry.
no, that's good. Doug was just clarifying the importance of, okay, good. He's going to sit by the mic. He was clarifying the importance of our communication with the city and the clinic. That communication needs to be clear so that, it informs where we move throughout this, low, medium, and high risk, these categories. I'm just going to suggest at this time to just take a look at the first page of the document, the low risk. There are some more details in there.
Can I follow up with one more question on that?
Yeah, please do.
Follow up with these. So when we think about where do we all live, family members or student or family members, what about a coworker? Meaning not an employee of the school, but let's say somebody that works at Whittier Seafood is positive, and we have, and Whittier Seafood, right, pick any business in town.
Right,
but one
right.
of their employees is positive, and there's a direct connection. Would that be considered part of the family?
It could. Oh, the question is, kind of expanding on who the school community is and the unique situation of living in Whittier. What if it was somebody, and I'm assuming you're talking about somebody that lives in the BTI, probably.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, pick
Right,
any business
right,
in town that
right.
tells their employees at the BTI.
Right,
There's, maybe, one of us has a second job, right?
right,
I don't have a second job, but I've got a second job working at any business in town.
Right.
And by association, and I'm a first contact with positive.
right. So the question is in regards to a response if any business in town had a positive, or we had exposure to a positive. How does that change our movement through the risk levels? And it will inform that. And I think we do, I don't know that there's a formula for that, but if we've got people in our school community that have been exposed to a positive, we need to take that into consideration. I don't know that there's a clear, it would surely up our sensitivity to where we are on this scale. I don't know that there's a clear way to determine that without a specific to say, okay, you've been exposed. What does that look like? I will tell you that one thing oh, very good. So Andrea, and then Anna, and then Frankie.
Well, I think we're all assuming as well that we would know who this person is, right? And the likelihood of that is hopefully slim, right? Because really, with HIPAA, we shouldn't know, right? Unless someone chooses to disclose, hey, I'm positive. So hopefully, at the top of this, we put our goal for, that we kept in mind as we designed the whole plan, right? So to create a plan that's inclusive and respectful of all students and families, including those with health concerns. So that often takes us to the more conservative end of things, right? Thinking about kids who have health concerns themselves or might be people who do. So in that case, I think we would end up going, right? Like, we're all gonna sit down and hash this out, but it would be a more conservative decision probably, right? Because we are trying to keep the in-person education as safe as possible, right?
Yeah. And
That would be the direction. I
to
would
add on to
envision
what-
us going after all these conversations.
right, because I think the example that Lindsay gave and that you're talking about is a step up from what the example Dave gave, which is, if this isn't an isolated case in the community that's being quarantined and doesn't have much community contact, that would be the context with which, and like Andrea says, we're going to err on the side of caution, especially given the fact of the unique living circumstances in Whittier, which is, if it's in the BTI, then there's a much higher chance of transmission than if we're not as vigilant. So we want to err on the side of caution, given that, and that's the importance of those daily communications. One, so we can protect people's, privacy rights, but yet at the same time collect important information so that we can make the best decision together.
And Andrea's comment was just, looking at this document, acting in a very conservative way to ensure safety, even if we don't know specifically who a person is that may be positive. Anna?
Just in regards to, would we change the risk level based on if somebody had a coworker who had tested positive? I think when we went through this week, so when the state contacts a business or a family or whatever, they're going to determine your exposure level, and then they'll tell you, you need to quarantine for 14 days or 7 days or whatever. So I don't know that, if the state is saying this person quarantines, I don't know that then affects the whole school, right? I think it would just be maybe a household, or, if that makes sense.
It does.
It's determined based on your interactions with that positive case.
Right.
Next steps.
So Anna's comment was in regards to what the state might determine as someone that needs to quarantine doesn't necessarily inform our best decisions in Whittier. Is that right? Just in regards to, doesn't necessarily mean we go high. It just depends on who that individual is and their exposure.
Right, I'm just saying, I think that even if, you know, like, for example, if someone works at the school
Right,
board at Whittier
right.
Food, you know, if the state determines they should quarantine, then they would quarantine. But I don't know that that necessarily affects the entire school,
Right,
because they then remove themselves
right.
from the school population.
Okay. Let me do Frankie and then and Scott, if that's okay.
Well, I have a concern that, we've been pretty lucky now. But, there's many of us that have to go to Anchorage to use one. And in doing that, that puts, only exposed. If you see people handling food, they're putting that on the shelf. You handle that same food, fruits, vegetables, that puts us in a whole different percentage. What do we do about that?
Right. Frankie's comment and concern is that we've been pretty lucky in Whittier, but families are traveling to Anchorage all the time to resupply, and which really ups the exposure to potentially being exposed to COVID. So good. And so what do we do with that? You're right. That's something we have to be very sensitive to. It's much different than some of our other communities out in Titlic and Chenega, who are very isolated. We have direct access to. So, I don't think we can ever let our guard down. We need to be communicating daily around that. And the best we can do is encourage our communities, everyone in our community. We all have to do our part to keep our schools open. And that's, as a family member, when you travel to Anchorage, please be safe, because, if your actions are risky and it puts our BTI at risk, it puts our children, we have to close schools. We have to do this together. So, good point, Frankie. Scott, sorry about waiting.
You realize that from the onset of symptoms, from the test, you're 2 to 5 days out in order to get a legitimate response from the CDC or CDC or whoever is notified. You're 2 to 5 days out. The exposure rate is mushroom really, really quick and grow really, really quick. And then we have people in our community that don't take it seriously. And the idea is, families included, that do not practice prevention. So we're rolling a little tiny snowball down the hill, it's going to get big very, very quick.
Right. And let me repeat that before I get to you, Dave. So Scott had said that I think recognizing that by the time somebody tests positive, it's really a delayed indicator. They've already potentially exposed others. You're already behind the 8 ball potentially if someone tests positive. Then you have to chase this thing back, and he referred to a snowball that's already rolling down the hill. Very true. Very true. Hey, Dave?
It sounds like the goal here, the priority is, the best thing for the students and for the teachers right now is for face-to-face interaction with students. And that right now, you feel that the city or the school feels that by taking the precautions that you outlined here, by social distancing, wearing masks, give precautions that you should be able to protect students as best as possible. Theoretically speaking, if everything goes right, everything should be fine. If there is a case that's identified, hopefully it can be isolated, but if not, you've got a plan for going forward and shutting things down and going to medium risk or high risk. I think that's what we're hearing.
Correct. So Dave was suggesting that, or summarizing that we're putting a plan in place with the goal of getting our kids back to school face to face, and that is truly a goal. I think it's a goal for everyone. but we're putting things in place to do our best. And I think you said to protect. There's no way we can totally prevent because, like you said, Scott, but we do our best to mitigate, to keep this at minimum. And so if someone happened to have it, that we've already put things in place to where we're cleaning, we're social distancing, that doesn't get spread. So yes, that's true. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to get our kids back in school safely for as long as possible.
And even if there is a case, hopefully by taking measures that we've taken, it should minimize the risk for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to just add on to what Frankie had said, and I think if you look at the document, even our low risk area kind of errs on the side of caution. For example, wearing masks. A lot of places at low risk aren't requiring masks. It's optional, and so we had that conversation about, well, where do we go from there? If even at low risk where there's no active cases and no new cases being identified, we're still wearing masks. And that's where it kind of goes to what we talked about. That's that part at the bottom of this document that references what's happening in surrounding communities, understanding that Whittier is a connected community, especially to Anchorage, and that there's continual in and out. And so we need to still be, while there's a pandemic, it's just like fire, right? If there's a fire happening in your neighbor's house, you have to be somewhat vigilant. And so while there's no perfect answers, we want to be as vigilant as possible, even at that low risk level.
Hey, Charlene, did you have your?
I was just wondering if you've identified how the information from the community, what health care as to when something happens or when there's a new case. It's imperative that you get that information as soon as possible to make any decision needs to be made. And the other question was, are you thinking about putting any more hand washing stations in the school?
Yes, and so the first question is, do we have a plan for a clearer route of communication with the clinic in the city to us, the school district? It is a priority for us in the next few weeks before that happens. And honestly, I'm looking at Dave, the mayor, and just suggesting that maybe we even have our attorney, ours or yours, to join us for a conversation to ensure we're not violating any HIPAA rules, but who should be in the circle of knowledge. Would we, as a school district, it surely seems like with the risk of our students and ultimately our community, we should be in that loop, but we would want some legal advice around that so that we're sharing the proper information. And the other question was, do we have hand sanitizing stations? We've got them ordered. So I think there are like 5 or 6 ordered for Whittier, not to replace hand washing, but to increase opportunities to keep our hands, sanitized and clean. Sanitizing isn't designed to replace hand washing, but you'll see that protocol in here. We've been working on getting those ordered for the last month. And as you can imagine, there aren't a lot of them around. So, but yes, those are being ordered. And then Frankie, did you have a question, Frankie?
I do have a question. My question concerns visitors to the school, and I think this is well known to the
Right.
school, on visit. Is there any way that we may be mandating that unplanned visitors call the school first? To see about coming to the school?
Yeah, there's possibilities to do that. At low risk, we're talking about limited visitors. And then medium risk, we're talking about no visitors.
And you can have the mentality of some people, but, think, well, I haven't been here anything, I haven't done anything, I've just stayed at home. We're supposed to believe that.
Right.
That next year,
Right.
people is coming into the school.
I agreed. Wholeheartedly agree. So I'm sorry for the people online. The question is limiting visitors to our schools. Are we talking about unplanned visitors or But I think we need to really consider that. Our goal is always to be an open school, but in times like this, the safety of our kids is primary. So, we're not going to have, we love to have parents come and have breakfast with their kids. Probably not a good idea. We need to limit it just to our kids, not because we don't want our parents there, but we want to keep our kids safe. We can't take that, we don't want to take that chance. So I think that's something we're going to continue to flesh out is even at low risk, what are we going to do and what's that going to look like? But I think once we hit medium, I think it's going to be pretty clear that, we're just not going to have visitors. Obviously, if there's an emergency and other things like that, we'll make accommodation. Correct. Right.
So Frankie, one of the things that I noticed a few minutes ago, even before you made your comment, was that I think that the visitor piece would be really good to have on this page, and it's not. And so I think, especially under medium risk, we'll definitely put no visitors, and then we'll find a place for maybe to be more intentional about what we mean by limited visitors. For example, limited visitors by phone, appointment only, or through contact with a staff, invitation by staff, something along those lines, so that we're more specific in the low, and then we definitely put, no visitors in medium and high, so that it's very explicit right up front. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Okay, good.
And so Doug was referencing our front page here, our 3 risk levels of including that language around visitors on there, because there are times when visitors should come in. We might have a student that's having an issue. We might have an IEP meeting and things like that. Those are very intentional times for a parent to be there. But correct. Exactly. Yeah. And Frankie just said, yes, those are planned visits. Yeah, Victor.
I'm just checking right now that, there's a lot of problems. We're all wearing these masks to protect each other. And you see those masks required at all times. What happens when you break this? This is one thing I've struggled with everywhere is you gotta wear masks, but then for restaurants, bars,
Right.
you can also, then when you're doing it there, you're just kind of exposing the.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Only reason I mentioned this, I was reading an article about some students in another country. They put up lighters around each desk. But it wasn't. I thought it was like a regular classroom session, but it was actually they're having their lunch.
Hmm.
So lighters and take their masks off. That is what we're on.
Victor's comment is, thank you, is if we're serving breakfast at school, whether it's in the classroom or wherever it is, kids are having to take their masks off, and that seems to be a risky time. And how do we do that, even if it's prepackaged, which is what we talk about moving up into the medium. We have, I know that Andrea and Christina, we have talked about the importance of providing food for kids and the risk of taking your mask off and eating. And so that is a place we've truly wrestled of the importance of nutrition and the risk of, and we've talked about classrooms. There's also been input around maybe it's not even in the classrooms. Maybe we spread out somewhere else, or what's the best place to do it in a clean way, but still remain spread out. But good point. And I know Leela's jotting those things down, but we'll continue to wrestle with that. Anna?
What about the idea of transitioning away from breakfast and providing a lunch that students take home? I mean, it would just be some retraining, right? Because everybody's kind of used to that routine of not feeding your kid breakfast at home, so they have it at the school, but then flipping that where they eat at home and then, we use Roland to provide a lunch that they take home, and that way, they're sitting at home eating, right? And we're not worrying about droplets and things in the classroom because students ate at the table that they're then gonna sit at and work. I don't know.
Yep.
It would take some retraining, I think, but I think it's something we should think about.
Still provide the nutrition, but do it in a safer way. So Anna's comment was, what if we shifted from doing breakfast to take-home lunches? Still providing a meal for students, but they would eat at home for breakfast. And then as they were leaving, we would have a packaged lunch for them to take home that they could eat at home, still getting food, but avoiding that risk of taking masks off and eating together. Is that correct? Okay. Frankie?
Actually, I think that's a wonderful idea that Anna has. I still have concerns over some of the schools that will eat breakfast. They're not eating. They need that flow.
So the challenge, like Frankie identified.
Let me
and-
reiterate first. and then
Oh, yeah, sorry.
You respond. And Frankie was just saying that, some of our students that don't have that food in the morning really need a breakfast. And that is truly one of the things we've wrestled with. Doug?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it is a big thing we wrestle with, because the reason that we have always served breakfast in the morning is to ensure that the nutrition was there prior to instruction, knowing that that's just the best way for students to be prepared for a good learning day in school. Not that we can't revise it, but we were looking at what are ways that we can retain that potential for nutrition in the morning and do it in a safe way. Is there a way we can spread out? Is there a way we can do prepackaged foods? If not, then I think we need to look at the next level, which would be, is there another mechanism like a lunch? And then beyond that, of course, the next level would be, well, unfortunately, if we can't figure out a way to do it safely, then we'll have to move away from food distribution, at least temporarily.
Andrea?
One idea we did kind of bounce around, that's kind of a hybrid, is having a breakfast time and a school start time, right? Because not everyone eats breakfast, so only if you're eating breakfast, come at 8:45, right? Because it's probably maybe half of our kids that come and visit, right? They eat at home. And then, then everybody come at 9, right? So then it's fewer kids, you can spread them out more, and then that theoretically would, right? You would get at both things there. You get a little more distance, you still feed people in the morning. So that's one idea that we bounced around a bit well as well.
And Andrea was just sharing that one of the ideas that has been bounced around with the staff that's worked on this is that possibly just offering the breakfast for those who need it. And really school start time becomes at 9. And if you want the breakfast, come at 8:45, but not quite as, the expectation wouldn't be there to be at 8:45, so that possibly we reduce the number of kids that are even coming for breakfast. Might be a kind of a hybrid idea. Okay.
Really quick too, we kind of started like an informal food pantry. We've connected with the Birdwood Food Pantry, and they are shuffling food here, and so we kind of, we have certain families we know that need it. So if we had to shift to lunches or something where that breakfast piece is getting missed, we could probably focus that food pantry piece on breakfast for families that need it.
Great. And this comment was that the community is already connected to the food pantry and Girdwood and trying to meet some of the needs that way. Might alleviate the need for the school to be doing it at the school. So good. I mean, that's such a need for our kids. We're trying not to avoid that. We recognize how important that is. Scott?
I understand you guys are fight and the difficulty of what you guys said, and I know you're not gonna make everybody happy. I feel an empathy. So don't take these series of comments as for others. But statistically, we're blessed in whether you have a summer season and everybody goes home to a winter season. And there is modified plans and other opportunities here to say, where are we gonna get the most exposure, where is the cross contamination going? We have people that we can partner with, people that work in the industry, people that are busy, we have tourists coming in the community. That time of transmission now is the riskiest time for transmission. Because we said, okay, we know that career shuts down September 25th, everybody goes home by November 1st, and now they're just into our local community. So the biggest exposure is right here where we're cutting things started. What about the lane, still start school in an online template, but the lane in class, seeing the trends go down and all the tourists move to state of Alaska and all the things that work for them, and looking at the trend when things start coming down, that's when we, okay, something that put kids in the classroom to make it. It's not the right.
Great, thank you. Scott's comment was that Whittier is a very seasonal. You just have to. I'm gonna keep looking at you. Make sure I do this right, Scott. Very seasonal community. Our highest risk area is now until probably September into November, and then once people leave, then we become much more of a local community again. What about the possibility of just being safe and doing online learning until we get to that point, and then go into the class time? Is that correct? Then doing that, once we get down to our local community, then bringing in the online class, bringing it in the face-to-face, but being conservative when we're at our riskiest time of the season. Thank you. Good. Let's look through a few of these details on this document. I'm going to let you read. I'm not going to read all these, but there will be a few things that I'll point out and add some details to. You can see there, we'll talk about breakfast is served in classrooms, at least in a spread out, whether it's classrooms or other places, but the idea is that we're not all gathering in the same place. Limiting visitors to the school building, mask required. That's right below that, about in the middle of that top part. When we look at frequent hand washing for staff and students, we are ordering sanitations, the disinfectant, the foam sanitizing stations. I'm hoping to have one right at the entryway so that all visitors, when you walk in, it's there, but also throughout the building. I think that'll be just healthy, just having those anyway, right? COVID or not, it'll be good to have those. When we look at minimizing shared school supplies, Whittier's already put in a PO for getting a lot of personal kits for students, materials, so that they're not sharing as much. Typically tubs of pencils and crayons and paper and things like that. We should be just setting it up so kids have their own pack of that. We are receiving a little bit of CARES Act funding, so we're going to put that towards that. We've also ordered a significant number of computers to minimize the sharing of those with our students. I'm not sure if it gets us to one-to-one yet, but those are on the way. So the idea is that just minimizing how much we're sharing materials and technology with each other. It also is going to help us if we ever end up in a high risk to have that technology that kids can take home with them. I'm jumping down to the healthy students and staff. Staff will be trained to survey and utilize infrared thermometers with students, staff, and visitors, and conduct health checks as needed. On my way down today, I was listening to one of our local attorneys talking about the feasibility and the legality of, one, asking students and staff to wear masks, and doing checks, thermometer checks, or temperature checks, where it could be seen as a search and seizure, if you're stopping somebody and collecting information. But he said at this point, it surely seems to be feasible for schools to do that to protect their school community and their kids. So we haven't determined yet if that's going to be all students. We have 2 thermometers coming for Whittier, assuming that'll be enough. Whether we decide to do all kids or how that'll look. Right now at the district office, all staff come in and have to take their temperature. If they've traveled at all, they need to take it twice a day and come in with a negative test. And so they're really quick. They're just doesn't, we talked about training. We want to do it right, but it's turn it on, put it next to your forehead and push the button. And it's literally, 1 to 2 seconds and you'll get a thermometer reading. And we would set parameters, if it's over such and such a temperature, we'd need to reevaluate, isolate. And we also, at the meeting today, there were also conversations around our ability to send kids home or isolate kids that come in with a fever. So that is also a feasible choice for us. So we'll have to determine what that looks like about, what's that trigger temperature. I know the hospital, Providence, uses 100 degrees for it, but we can determine what that would look like. So, yeah.
With the health screening and stuff like that, I just want to know here, go, no go, refrigerator, hanging like you got for family. So that way they know, they've got these symptoms, they got this, the kid doesn't go to school. Then I'm gonna get into something a little bit more, 50% of your staff have kids in the school already. So if my kid is sick, or our daughter is sick, there's other like Andrew. She's suspected of COVID, she's suspected of COVID symptoms, she's not gonna go on to go back. So most of the staff is home, so you just do it. So, it's kind of scary for everybody involved.
Agreed. We've talked about that. So Scott's comment was maybe having that. I think that's great. We're going to need to do a lot. I don't think we can over communicate at this time and before school starts, but talked about having a reminder to families, like the little thing that can go on the refrigerator that speaks to, if your child is sick, please, for the sake of the community, leave that, for the school. If they have a temperature, if they have symptoms, please keep them home. But what do we do when staff have sick kids? And, a lot of our staff have kids. What does that do? So you're right. And I think that's probably where we're the most vulnerable, Scott, is the ability to get subs. If we have, and our ability to get subs is not particularly great. So that puts us in a tough situation if we ended up with like 3 staff members who have kids that need to be out because we're not sure. One thought I've had is the ability for us to, and this is me thinking out loud, so I haven't confirmed this, if this is even a possibility, but working directly with the clinic to allow for quick access to the COVID test for our teachers and kids. If we have a teacher that, might not be feeling well, can we get a priority? Do we have to wait, or can we just get a quick test so that we can get results back right away? That might be really beneficial. And I'm not speaking for the clinic yet because I haven't run that by them, but I surely think that would be valuable for our staff to stay on top of their own health and monitor their own health. Lindsay.
So speaking on that, guidelines coming back for students and staff, right, the norm right now is 2 negative tests 7 days apart. So even, are you still out 7 days? So I think you have to figure out some backup plan.
Right.
Because a test is, right, like, fit up into that point in time. Your viral load doesn't hit in between.
Right.
Until 2 to 6 days, typically up to 14.
Right.
So 2 negative tests, 7 days apart. We got 7 days.
Right.
Scott, I had a quick question going back to what you had said, because that idea of like a go, no go page for parents to go to companies that, and this, not just for you, but for everybody, would that be, do you think that would be more beneficial? Just, I'm trying to be pragmatic here with being really specific, because I think it's a good idea for parents to have at least a little worksheet on when to not send your kid to school, maybe more specific than we have been in the past. Would that be on this page here? Would that be a helpful place to have it? Or are you talking about a whole separate page? Put it on one page. Okay. No,
Or a separate.
Or a poster.
It's actually a magnet,
Yeah.
like, and not in the computer.
Right.
all of it On a magnet.
So the communication around this is simply about where do we put that information that we can share with parents about symptoms. Please keep your child home when they exhibit these symptoms. A magnet for the refrigerator or something as a reminder. So
yeah, and actually the CDC and the pediatrics, they actually have
Yes.
a one-page poster of that maybe we should just have a company. That's why I was asking if it
Yep.
needed to be on this page, because it kind of overclutters it. And I think, Scott, that piece that you're talking about is pretty important. So maybe its own separate, page would be an easier graphic to read and digest,
Yep.
which is what we're trying to go for here, to keep it simple for people to make decisions.
And Lindsay, I didn't repeat hers, but hers was, for the state, for people who are traveling anyway, you need 2 negative tests. I would think if someone came in and had a fever, was symptomatic of something and got a test and it was negative, you'd realize, okay, that's not. But I would check with the clinic and see what the determination is. But if somebody was symptomatic of something, but it wasn't COVID, then we still don't want people sick coming to work, but we'll check the protocol for that. Yeah, Frankie, and then I'm going to ask Debbie if she's got anybody that's put anything in the chat box. Yeah.
I have a curious question. Training and reminding staff of mental health, care for students and each other. What's that entail?
You're looking at
Low risk. Healthy students and staff.
third from the bottom. So Frankie's asking the question about on the draft for low risk, third bullet from the bottom, training and reminding staff of mental health care for students and each other. One thing that's been clear throughout all this is that the emotional and the mental health strain on everyone has been significant. As things have changed, as this kind of hangs over our head, that stress level, it doesn't get released. It just kind of hangs there, as we kind of all live through this. So recognizing that this is not just about academics. This is about the health of our kids, and it's about the health of our community, and it's the health of our staff. So we're not simply coming back to school to get our kids' grades up, or, we want them to be academically, we want them to move in that direction, but we're talking about children, not just students. And so I think this speaks to the recognition that we need to take care of each other. We need to put things in place that speak to that and recognize that when the kids walk in the door, hopefully first day of school, at the end of August, it's not, okay, here's your math work, let's go. It's, we're checking in, we're making sure we're taking care of our children. So. Debbie, has there been any comments in the chat?
There aren't any comments or concerns at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. So I don't know if you could hear that, but there aren't any, no one's putting anything in the chat for the Zoom portion. So I'm just looking through here. Any thoughts, any comments? We're looking at low risk, and I'm starting to move over to that medium risk, but thank you for that question about clarifying that, Frankie. Looking at the medium risk. Probably one place to look at is the first bullet, 2 secondary bullets down. Looking at increasing the social distancing strategies within the classrooms and movement during the school day. If we had to, if some of our classes were so big that we needed to actually spread them out more, isolate a teacher, could a teacher, provide instruction to the kids in the classroom without actually being in that room? What would that look like? We're thinking of all scenarios to be able to keep our kids in school safely. So that's what that speaks to. Hopefully we wouldn't need to go there, but we are prepared to do what we need to do. And then it talks about an A-B day or half day possibilities, half days for different groups possible. Medium risk, we start to limit the breakfast items. And yet we've talked about that. What does breakfast look like? And should we be doing breakfast? So that will be a further conversation that we have. And talks about no visitors. Down to the health of students and staff, again, in concert with the health clinic, daily health checks, maintaining confidentiality. One of the bullets speaks to students not sharing computers and materials. We are looking at some different ultraviolet cabinets that will sanitize computers differently. So we're looking at some possibilities of getting those. One student could use one. It could go in the cabinet for a period of, it's not all that long, it's 10 or 15 minutes. But so we're looking at finding ways that we can sanitize our computers in between use without dripping disinfectant down into the keyboards and ruining screens. And it needs to be a real specific cleaner for our computers. Any questions or thoughts around some of those components in the medium risk? And then just looking down to the high risk, if we end up in the high risk, we'll close our schools immediately. We'll go to the online learning. We are working now on what platform will we use, and I think the staff needs to get together and determine, what platform will be the best. We'll want the same platform for all of our kids, so that no matter what teacher they're working with online, that we're all using the same, whether it's Google Classroom or Canvas or whatever. So we'll be talking about the right tools for that model and how to best meet the needs of kids and families. So that's where we are with a broad stroke look at what we're shooting for this fall. We're looking at starting school on time. We're looking at starting school with all of our kids 5 days a week, half-hour days shorter. But that'll change as we monitor closely. And my next task then is to meet directly, spend more time with Jim. I've met with him a little bit, our city manager, and meet with Paul at the clinic and set up that communication, make sure that's in place, and possibly with Dave as well to talk about what information do we have the right to. I would argue that we have the responsibility to know what the cases are in this community, so that we can make the right decision for our kids. Otherwise, we could be a party to expanding the issue if nobody's told us there are active cases. So we surely don't want that. So now we've kind of covered the documents. We're more than welcome. We've got 15 more minutes to cover any questions you may have, comments, thoughts. Again, Leela's taken notes for us today. We'll be setting up a meeting probably next week for Whittier staff and administration to walk through this and talk about what's come out of today's meeting. Lindsay?
Two comments. So just being in town for the last 5 to 10 days, right, rumor has it we have at least 2 positives, only one that has been publicly, there's only been one information sent out, right? I did learn listening to the ECO conversation yesterday with Commissioner Johnson, Dr. Zinsky, that if we have a student positive, the contract tracers will contact the school. We may not know who the parent can sign their consent to release the name, but they will let us know. I don't know who the contract tracers are for Whittier right now. I have no idea who that is. Second thing, and I hadn't thought about this until Scott said it. Right, my mind is wrapped around getting kids back in the classroom, but I think he makes a good point that this is our highest risk time. Right? Because if we roll this through our school in September, October, we're out. Right? And potentially we then lose kids. I just thought about that before the fall. Like, let's start super conservative. Right? AIM just come out saying how that they will probably be opening just because their community spread at a high risk. And I think we even fall under that. If you look at the hub, DHS's hub, we fall under that also, particularly on the 14-day rolling. So I guess those are 2 comments, not necessarily questions.
Okay.
Something to think about as we're 4 weeks out.
Right. I'll just summarize. I won't do it full justice, Lindsay, but the fact that we don't fully know, there's kind of rumors about 2 cases in Whittier, but you're only aware of, there's only been an announcement for 1.
I mean,
Dave commented today that there were 2, but we haven't seen. So our confidence in how many cases there are, and maybe we should be conservative walking into this next school year, especially while we have so many visitors, right? I mean,
Yeah,
okay.
it had a BTI, I mean, all those
Right.
employees.
Yeah.
Like, a few businesses out of it, but.
Right.
90% of the employees in this town.
Yep, just with the number of people that work in the businesses that then live in the BTI and the potential exposure, at least during this season, this busy season, this transitional season, when there's so many visitors here. Okay. Frankie,
I'm just curious, how would that work with HIPAA?
how would what work with HIPAA?
With the HIPAA of, I know that we would need to go by the school or whoever it is that would notify the school, that everyone signs the HIPAA for security reasons, application. How does that interact?
What Dr. Lee said there was a teacher call yesterday, and she said you have the option to release your name. So somebody from whoever it is, the contact tracer person can call, and if you sign, they're gonna say, hey, so-and-so tested positive. If not, you're gonna get a call that says, hey, a student in your school has tested positive.
What it comes down to is that it's last year HIPAA right now because it's an infectious. Kind of new person.
But you're right, in a small community, that feels like, whoa, like,
Well, and then who would handle that?
Yeah, the question was around how does HIPAA fit into this with student name being potentially released, or what a challenge that is for us if we don't know who it is, but we know there's somebody in the community. How do we react properly? No one has a desire to violate anybody's privacy rights, but in a pandemic we have a responsibility to try to keep everyone safe, and hard to do that when it's kind of cryptic about there might be somebody. So yeah, keeping that information flowing. So I think that'll be prudent for us and the city of Whittier to know legally, what we can know, what we should know, so that we're taking those steps to do the best we can. Any other thoughts or comments? This isn't, I mean, if you have any more that come to mind, please feel free to email me. And for those online, you can email or you can call our district. You can email me at mhanley, Hanley, at chugetschschools.com. And I've gotten a few comments already that we'll be sharing with staff and trying to modify this document and clean it up a little bit. That will come. Another meeting for staff that are available to try to finalize some documents and get that word out to communities. And hopefully by then, if not sooner, we'll be sharing with Whittier what specifically what our goal is, what our plan is, and what risk level we think we are at and what's been confirmed by the state. Yes, Scott?
So, who is your regulatory agency that approves your plan? Is that the CDC? Or would you need to go, no go on that?
No, it's Department of Health and Social Services. So yeah. Yeah, it goes, we submit it to DEED, the Department of Ed, but they then turn it over to DHSS. So these documents get submitted in a different form. This information gets submitted to them. I'll be doing that probably next week. And they'll tell us, if it's good enough or not. They'll approve this. And then we'll submit later what level risk and how we're starting school. So, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Nailene, thank you for putting in a long day for us to be able to use this facility. It's nice to be able to be face-to-face. Just before we go, Debbie, anything in the chat box that we need to address?
No, you did a great job presenting all of the information, and we really appreciate all the comments and questions that were provided today.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leila, for being on and taking the notes. And we'll get together and incorporate all this stuff into these future documents. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. And again, Neil, thank you for making this available to us.